we're just heartbroken. Myself, my wife, my family, my son actually, on his 2019 visit to Israel, had lunch with him and his wife, Erica. We're shattered first as human beings because a great human being has been taken from us. Was an extraordinary friend. He said, he wrote me a letter on May 2nd this year. He said, one of my greatest joys as a Christian is advocating for Israel and forming alliances to defend Judeo-Christian civilization. A few weeks before the tragedy yesterday, I called him and I spoke to him and I said, please come to Israel. I invited him to Israel. And sadly, that visit will not take place. But he was a defender of our common Judeo-Christian civilization. He was unbelievably excited to walk in the footsteps of Jesus here. He valued our bond, the bond between America and Israel. He did so many things to defend free speech. He had his truth. He stood up for it. But he said, you can come and debate me. He invited that debate. He certainly didn't invite the violence, the horrible violence that tried to silence him. And this is a worldwide problem. The people on the extremes, the Islamists, the radical Islamists, and their union with the ultra-progressives, they often speak about human rights. They speak about free speech, but they use violence to try to take down their enemies, whether it's President Trump, who's been almost assassinated twice, or they try to kill me here too. But they got Charlie Kirk, and it's just heartbreaking.
Let you go. I want you to address one thing, and it's just the absurdity of it. Some of the internet rumors that somehow Israel is behind the Charlie Kirk murder, and I don't believe it for 1 second, but I want you to make a statement. It's so absurd.
That's insane. That's insane. Israel also changes the orbit of the moon. Israel pushes the sun. I mean, the whole thing it's not only insane, I think it's so absurd, so stupid, and so ridiculous. You can't believe that people are saying this. They just found the perpetrator. They'll get to the bottom of this. But they go, they have no limits. When you hate Jews, when you hate the Jewish state, you're willing to say anything and promote all these absurd rumors. And by the way, they're willing to kill us all the time. I mean, that's what they're doing. And over the centuries, when Jews, especially in the Middle Ages, the horrific Middle Ages, the worst things were said about Jews you couldn't possibly believe. We were poisoning the wells. We were drinking the blood of Christian children. You name it. I mean, these things, that continued actually up to the Holocaust. The Nazis said the same thing. We're carrying vermin, we're spreading disease. And people believed it. And every time they believed it, this was a prelude to a greater and greater massacre, culminating with the worst massacre of them all, the Holocaust. Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time. He wanted to expel the Jews. And 𝗲𝗏𝗄𝗎 went to Hitler and said, if you expel them, they'll all come here. So what should I do with them? He asked. You said, burn them.
Modern historians have also shown that Hitler's purported Jewish ancestry may not be as absurd an idea as previously thought, with psychiatrists also demonstrating that the Führer's evident insecurity concerning his lineage could have been a very big factor in his psychological makeup and subsequent political actions. To say that Hitler came from a strange family would be a bit of an understatement. His parents' marriage was borderline incestuous. They were first cousins and required a special dispensation from the Catholic Church in order to be able to marry. Hitler's father, Alois, an Austrian customs officer, was a violent drunkard who beat both his wife and his children frequently. He was also a serial womanizer, who had also been married twice before and also fathered a child out of wedlock. Hitler's loathing of his elderly father has long been explained by Hitler's very different personality, by his doting mother's spoiling of the boy, and by Hitler's artistic pretensions that caused him to deride his father's career as a middle-ranking civil servant. But it has emerged since the war that another factor in Hitler's difficult relationship with his father may have been his father's murky parentage. Alois Hitler was illegitimate, something considered fairly bad in 19th century rural Austria. But it seems that Hitler suspected that his grandmother, Alois's mother, was hiding a secret concerning who Alois's father was. Hitler's grandmother, Maria 𝗧𝗍𝗍𝗶𝗁, was unmarried and working as a domestic servant in the Austrian town of Graz when, in 1836, at the age of 42, she fell pregnant. At the time she became pregnant, Maria was in the employ of 𝗧𝗍𝗱𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, a member of Graz's small Jewish community. This story was initially rubbished in the 1950s by German historian Nikolaus von Preradovic, who said that no Jews were in Graz before 1856. But subsequent investigations more recently have shown that a Jewish community was in Graz before 1850. Preradovic was also a noted Nazi sympathizer and was evidently offended by the suggestion that the Führer could have been a quarter Jewish. In 1938, Hitler asked Nazi lawyer Hans Frank, later notorious as the wartime governor of German-occupied Poland, to investigate his grandmother. The impetus for such an investigation was the letter Hitler had received from his British half-nephew William Patrick Hitler. William Patrick had used his relations to the Führer to obtain for himself nice jobs in Germany before the war and enjoyed his status as a Hitler relative. In 1938, Hitler, who had tired of his half-nephew, asked William to give up his British citizenship, and William, fearing some form of trap, fled Germany and tried to blackmail Hitler, the specific allegation being that Hitler's paternal grandfather was Jewish. Hitler must have suspected that there was some truth in this allegation to have taken the trouble of commissioning an investigation into his own grandmother. Hans Frank was hanged in 1946 following the Nuremberg trial, but a book that he wrote in prison was published in Germany in the years following his execution. In it, Frank maintains that he discovered that Frankenberger paid an allowance to Maria 𝗧𝗍𝗍𝗏 from the moment of Hitler's father's birth until the boy's 14th birthday. Why? Frank found that Frankenberger's 19-year-old son Leopold had got Maria pregnant, and Leopold's father, in order to avoid a court hearing and the resultant bad publicity, had in effect paid Hitler's grandmother alimony for 14 years in return for her keeping her mouth shut. Hitler's father had been for the first 39 years of his life called Alois 𝗧𝗍𝗍𝗏, until in 1876 he had approached the church and local authorities in Austria to prove the identity of his father, not Leopold Frankenberger, but a man named Johann Georg Ħiedler. Ħiedler was an itinerant miller and who had married Maria 𝗧𝗍𝗍𝗏 in 1842 and was therefore Alois 𝗧𝗍𝗍𝗏's stepfather. The only proof of this paternity came from Ħiedler's own brother, who swore before a Catholic notary in Alois's presence that his brother Johann had made Maria pregnant and then had abandoned her and her child Alois. Alois then legally changed his surname from 𝗧𝗍𝗍𝗏 to Hitler, a variation of the surname Ħiedler.
I'm an American citizen. Yes, I want Israel to win. Yes, I'm a Christian. But, some of the mess, and you've seen how I've been treated, Megan, by some, not all, by some.
No, it's very irritating.
It's
been
almost
so
as if
unfair. They were coming after you after a turning point for, among other things, that you had Dave Smith there. Dave Smith is allowed to criticize Israel. You had both sides. The Israeli side was overrepresented.
No, you're not allowed to. It's even worse than that. Again, I just want to repeat for the 5th time, I love Israel. I want Israel to win. But my moral character is now being put into question, Megan. Not my decisions. Not like, hey, are you doing this? Is it smart or is it dumb? But no, I am a bad person if I do this. And I could go, you saw it, Megan. It was trending on Twitter, thousands of tweets and text messages. And if I were to be charitable and generous, I will say the people that are attacking me are in a hyper-paranoid state because they're at war, and war tends to make things black and white, and you're a hammer looking for a nail. So I'm trying to be charitable, Megan. Literally, I'm trying to cut as much slack as I can, right? They go, okay, what would it be like if all of a sudden I'm starting to see a pattern of behavior similar to what my grandparents saw in 1930s Germany online. How would I behave? So that's like my charitable kind of overcompensation spirit. At the same time, I'm like, but it's not defensible to be dumb. Epstein, with his little friend Ghislaine and Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, who was obviously a spy of the Israeli intelligence agencies, that there was something else going on here. Epstein was not some sort of whiz kid hedge fund manager. Epstein was playing a part. Epstein was a LARPer. Epstein was cast for a specific role, and he played it really well. The sweatpants and the Harvard jacket, the kind of disheveled hair, looking as if he was so smart and above the clouds that he was doing advanced mathematic equations on the back of napkins. But if you actually go into some of the videos of people that met with Epstein at the time, they said he was awfully unimpressive when it came to finance and markets and economics. And it's nothing new that if you're in the intel agencies, you want to try and get as much blackmail on powerful people as possible. Easy, not hard. And this is no longer just speculation. First of all, the evidence that shows that Epstein was a creation of either Mossad, Israeli intelligence, American intelligence, Saudi intelligence, or maybe he was just a hired gun. Maybe he was just the guy that countries would go to and park a couple $100 million and say, hey, can you get one of the members of the royal family with a 13-year-old so we can get them to do what we want to do? Members of Congress are actively being blackmailed. The Epstein playbook is being used on a daily basis. Jeffrey Epstein was not a financier. He was not a hedge fund manager. Jeffrey Epstein was a key player in a multi-decade blackmail operation against the most powerful people on the planet.
Harrison Smith of the American Journal on InfoWars tweeted saying, I'm not going to name names, but I was told by someone close to Charlie Kirk that Charlie thinks Israel will kill him if he turns against them.
Do you think there's any intel community involvement in this?
I wouldn't be surprised one bit. I am convinced, based on my own sources and my own reporting on this story, he wasn't one of ours.
So he was an American, which leads basically three options: MI6, Saudi, or Mossad.
Yep.
Which one would you choose?
I guess Mossad, given his connection to Ghislaine Maxwell.
So what does that mean?
Well, I mean, it's possible that that's the reason everything's getting buried, that there is some treasure trove, and it's getting buried because...
How many people here believe that? Raise your hand. Okay, I'd say about half the hands think that it's being buried because of an Israeli thing.
It could be. I really don't know.
And I have no evidence to suggest that.
No, me neither. I did think it was very odd how, look, half of you raised your hands because you've heard that theory, you've heard it debated, you have questions, but the one time Pam Bondi was asked a question about this at the cabinet meeting on Monday, she was like, and as for whether he was an agent, that I don't know. I haven't looked into that. I'll get back to you. You haven't looked into it? What do you mean? So that was kind of a fishy answer.
And Megan, remember, Alexander Acosta in 2007, he said he was told to treat Epstein carefully because he was an intel asset. That was one of Trump's cabinet secretaries who was literally a U.S. attorney 3 hours from here in Florida. He said that himself.
Well, and let me tell you the consequences of that. His subpoena, his search warrant on Jeffrey Epstein's residence was very narrow. It was not the kind of like, let's get everything. Let's see everything inside this guy's, dressers and so on. It was very, very narrowly tailored. And to this day, that's what the FBI is stuck with. So it really is possible that Dan and Cash got in there and, in like a Geraldo and Al Capone's vault situation, opened it up and we're like, oh my gosh, there's nothing in here. Like, we did not find the magic documents or photos or evidence of anything. And why not? I don't know we'll ever know why not. I'm not sure we'll ever know, but...
And one thing a friend said to me, interestingly, which is, okay, Charlie, we've pushed back against the media on COVID, on lockdowns, on, Ukraine, on the border, so like maybe we should also ask a question: is the media totally presenting the truth when it comes to Israel? Just a question, that maybe we shouldn't believe everything the media says, because I know I've been conditioned to ask a lot more critical questions over the last couple of years. So, Ben, some people would accuse Israel of wanting to ethnically cleanse.
Well, when you take a look at the video and you take a look at the venue and the spectators and how close they are to Charlie Kirk, and then you have that kind of like umbrella over him, that kind of tent, you have to know that this shooter had to be perched in a position with respect to being able to lay his sights perfectly, basically a headshot. And the shot that was taken to immediately incapacitate Charlie Kirk. And so this was not some amateur who just, got up on a rooftop because it was, what I consider spontaneous combustion. He got up this morning and decided he was going to do something crazy. This seems the earmark of a professional that got up onto this rooftop well in advance of the venue being occupied by the spectators. He was clearly undetected. There was no indication that anybody saw him up on this rooftop. Obviously, after that one single shot was taken, he was able to basically very quietly and systematically elude any further detection and escape.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him. On the evening of September 11th, a family member of Tyler Robinson reached out to a family friend who contacted the Washington County Sheriff's Office with information that Robinson had confessed to them or implied that he had committed the incident.
In 33 hours, we have made historic progress for Charlie. At my direction, the FBI released the first set of FBI photos of the suspect at 10 a.m. local time on 9/11. Then, shortly thereafter, the FBI reward of $100,000 was released at 10:45 a.m. local. In less than 36 hours, 33 to be precise, thanks to the full weight of the federal government and leading out with the partners here in the state of Utah and Governor Cox, the suspect was apprehended in a historic time period.